Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain is one of the biggest video games of 2015. At the same time, its publisher Konami is one of the most controversial video game companies of the year, due to a long-standing conflict with the series creator Hideo Kojima, who parted ways declaring that The Phantom Pain would be the last game in the series he would ever work on. The ending left a very polarizing response from many long-term fans, but as a novice to Metal Gear, I actually walked away really liking the twist ending. To get everyone up to speed, following the explosion which landed Big Boss in hospital following the events of Ground Zeroes, you are requested to take on a new identity to protect you from your enemies, and are escorted by a mysterious man named Ishmael. The ending reveals that you are in fact not Big Boss, but rather one of the support team from the Ground Zeroes operation, tasked with continuing the legacy of Big Boss and growing Mother Base to be stronger than ever, while the real Big Boss deals with operations elsewhere. Hence, the Phantom Pain is a reference to the player being the shadow or ghost of Big Boss. This is alluded throughout the entire game, including never directly crediting him as Big Boss, but rather Punished or Venom Snake. As a series outsider, I think the ending is incredibly smart and inventive, and manages to throw you off the scent extremely well, and here's why. Visual and auditory manipulation are extremely prevalent throughout, in 3 distinct moments. Firstly, upon awakening, you're asked to create a custom identity. No matter what you create, the Doctor will always show you as Big Boss in the mirror, establishing the first manipulation. The second is the assassin sent to kill you. As she chokes the player out, the game fades to black with a peaceful humming sound, likely indicating that the player is on their final breath and about to pass away. But this is interrupted by the assassin being engulfed in flames, bringing the player back to life as further suggested by the absence of the humming. We assume she's dead because she's been burnt alive and also she fell out a window, but we'll come back to this. The third and final manipulation is Ishmael. He is voiced by Kiefer Sutherland, who is supposed to be voicing Big Boss, which is confusing considering we never hear the player's character ever talk. We are never given Ishmael's identity, besides a name and a voice. And before we have a chance to demand answers, he's gone.
And it's gone!
These 3 instances play a significant part to the game's true meaning, but we have other subtleties to take account of. Firstly, let's start with the opening soundtrack of the remix of David Bowie's The Man Who Sold the World. The song's meaning focuses on a doppelganger, a look-alike, someone identical to another person. It has subtly manipulative lyrics. For example, the chorus changes to adapt to the character of the song. The line, "I never lost control," is later replaced by, "We never lost control." Even David Buckley writes that the lyrics mirror Bowie's worry about detachment and multiple personalities. Buckley also attributed the song to the poem known by some as "The Man Who Wasn't There" by William Hughes Merens, which goes, "Yesterday upon the stair I met a man who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. I wish he'd go away." These theories are well justified given the song's use in The Phantom Pain. We become Big Boss's doppelganger and reality begins to literally blur as the unknown protagonist succumbs to his new identity and doesn't even know who he is anymore. In Big Boss's cassette tape, he reinforces this notion with the line, "I am you and you are me. Carry this wherever you go." Hence the continuous swapping of visuals and sound. It's transitioning both characters into each other's identities. The chunk of shrapnel even plays a metaphor to Big Boss's identity. At the end, when we see the character embrace Big Boss, the shrapnel is sharper and more horn-like, representing that the character has a literal splintered personality. By smashing the mirror, we confirm that the character is breaking down the illusion and embracing his new identity as Big Boss, despite distorting reality as indicated by the shattered mirror. He is no longer a phantom, but a real person. He is convinced both himself and the world that he is Big Boss, echoing the lyrics of The Man Who Sold the World. Think of it as the ending to The Usual Suspects. In that film, it's revealed that Kevin Spacey was in fact the mysterious villain all along, and as the famous quote goes, "The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist." Long-term fans may see this as a fourth wall breaker, and indeed a reality checker. The cassette tape states that it is from the man who sold the world. This means that the cassette tape isn't the David Bowie song, it's Big Boss explaining that he and the character are now the same person. It's using the meaning of the song as a metaphor to explain its point. Big Boss has sold the world his legacy, and in turn, sold the reality of what fans thought they knew. Of course, many fans will find this frustrating, but the truth hurts and Kojima perfectly leaves his personal legacy on his own game. Next, we must address Ishmael. If you're familiar with the name, you'll also notice that he keeps referring to you as Ahab. Both names are a reference to Herman Melville's Moby Dick, and if you need further proof, that explains the massive whale. Certain characters in Moby Dick are symbolic of biblical characters. In the book of Genesis, Ishmael was saved by the miracle of a water well whilst dying in the desert. In the same way that Big Boss finds your character to be his miracle of survival, this notion is later played upon again during Quiet's ending. She saves a dying Big Boss whilst in the desert. Natalia Wright, author of Melvin's use of the Bible, pointed out that Ishmael was part of an allegory in which he represented a wanderer and outcast. It represents the tragedy of Quiet, who has been cast aside and chooses to wander alone. You'll also notice that the assassin sent to kill you in the opening scene was in fact Quiet. When I mentioned before that the game makes it graphically clear that the assassin must be dead, it brilliantly throws you off the scent. We see her fully clothed and in close quarters combat, whereas the Quiet we come to know is almost entirely naked and a distant sniper. It completely distinguishes Quiet, so we don't make the immediate connection. The fact that she is set on fire plays into her supernatural ability. Her skin is flawless, which contrasts with seeing her muscle tissue as if her skin was being burnt off, and her fascination with water infers to her attempting to put out a fire. Breathing through her skin almost symbolizes her being too hot. The use of a scorching hot desert as a setting makes total sense in this regards. The image of fire burning and water flowing are rather prominent throughout the game, as we contrast between the blazing desert to wet marshlands to fiery destruction to simply taking a shower. Even Huey Emmerich continues his family tradition of wetting himself. Ishmael's reference to the player as Ahab also has significant weight behind it. Captain Ahab in Moby Dick was flawed for his overconfidence, human ignorance, and lack of self-awareness. G.M. Sweeney stated in his writing Melvin's use of classic mythology that Captain Ahab draws parallels to Narcissus, a hunter in Greek mythology. As the name suggests, Narcissus was known for his beauty, until he fell in love with his own reflection in a pool of water and drowned. Ahab references the myth as the key to it all, and the theme of finding truth through the physical world. Through the protagonist's interactions with the physical world does he discover who he truly is. Quite poetic in the case of Kojima, we have a character who's disfigured after an explosion and his scars and fragments of the blast remain with him visually. He isn't exactly the most appealing character, so his search for beauty basically means his search for his identity. In all, I believe the Phantom Pain's ending is wonderfully justifiable. The conflict with Ghostface plays within the world of MGS, but I believe it's less about the story itself and more about the frame in which we view the world from. The opening poses a lot of significant questions which almost fade into obscurity as our attention is drawn to defeating the threat of Skullface. But throughout the game, small fragments remind us of the constant feeling that something isn't right. The game breaks the fourth wall. It's a Metal Gear game, sure, but there's a lot of differences about it. The gameplay redesign, the structure in which the story is told, and most importantly, the new voice artist. People were up in arms when David Hayter was not returning, but despite what you're told, I have my own theory. With the fourth wall twist, I believe that the decision to exclude Hayter in favour of a new voice by Kiefer Sutherland was deliberate to play into the metaphysical plan by Kojima, and by this point, you should expect this kind of crap from him. He wanted the game to feel out of place in some way, So my theory is that it was just a brilliant artistic decision. Fans may disagree, but the game is different in every aspect, and it all plays a fundamental part to the conclusion of Kojima's beloved and treasured series. Discovering that you're not Big Boss may upset some, but the game reassures you that no matter who you are, referencing both the character and the player, you will always be Big Boss, which is heartfelt to say the least. It's an incredible piece of meta game design. We place ourselves in the shoes of the character personalities we love, but it's simply the illusion of what entertainment can do for us. Kojima makes it clear that this is his world and his creation, and before proudly walking away from the company that housed his glorious game, giving us a shocking and challenging conclusion is just the cherry on top. Fix that, Konami.